most women have been having access to top tier percent men all the time. All right. Especially in civilizations where there was like a kingdom or something like that. The prince will come in and mess with the girls. They had concubines. They'll come and mess with the girls of the village and scoop one up, send her back to the village, to the streets. But in theory, we would hope that this sexual marketplace would select sort of like the left, all right, where you see all the red and the black, where you'd have an equal chance at partnership. This is what monogamy actually promotes. Well, what's really happening is what's going on the right, where you see in the blue, men, the top 3 men are getting access to all of the women. And so this is what's happening now. Now, you might say, Coach, man, that's just theory stuff. That is just theory stuff. But let's go ahead and back up what we're talking about here. Here's an article by a sociologist that says the Pareto principle and sex. 20% of men have sex with 70% of women. 20% of men have sex with 70% of women. So if we go back to this chart right here, this makes sense. If you take the 2s and the 3s out for the women, or the 1s and the 2s, and you kept the 3s through the 3 through the 10s in your rating system, and you took the top 2 men, they are overwhelmingly having relationships with 70% of the women. And this principle is not only applied in this situation, it's applied across the board. Even in real estate, in real estate, 20% of the real estate agents sell 80% of the properties. And the remaining 20% of the properties are sold by 80% of the real estate agents. So it is not just a situation in sexual dynamics. This goes across the board. 80% of the wealth in our country is owned by 20% of the people. And the rest of the remaining 20% is owned by 80% of the people. It kind of goes across board. But when we talk about selection, and we talk about when women come and say men are trash, well, if we say not all men are like that, well, here we are. Once you understand throughout history that only 40% of males reproduce, whereas 80% of females did, it would explain the difference in our behavior. When you talk about reproduction, when you especially talk about the single mother rate in this black community, and you often say, well, the Pookie and the Pookie and the Ray Ray and all these names that we come up with, they are the ones having all the babies. And then when the women in the community say, well, men are trash, it's the men's fault. And then you have a vast majority of men going, what? How was it our fault? We didn't even get any at-bats. You didn't even select us. Not only that, we definitely didn't procreate with you. Well, when you think about it, in the entire history of our world, only 40% of the males have reproduced, whereas 80% of the women have reproduced. There is only a small percentage of women, 20% to be exact, that have never reproduced. In the community, when you talk about single mother and single father rate, most men in the community are not procreating. They're not even getting a chance to procreate. Whereas most of the women have procreated, and they have procreated, and then all of a sudden they're single mothers and they want the stepdad approach. So men are getting more at bats as stepdads than they are ability to procreate. Okay. We also talk about the Genghis Khan effect, is that a lot of people are talking about, and this kind of goes into the whole theory. Most women have not been able to sexually select. They've been part of some concubines. They've been part of just taking advantage of. There's been war where women are the spoils of war, and the new people come in and they take the women and they do whatever they need to do with the women, impregnate and knock them up. And then we have this mixed civilization. You also had the most powerful men like Genghis Khan procreating and leaving still a legacy after thousands and thousands of years not even being here. Okay. They're still descendants of Genghis Khan today. So most of this men are trash is basically backed up by the fact that it's not true. I know it's not all men are like that, but it's not true because most men are not getting at bats. Let's go ahead and give you another story right here. And this is a current one, came out in June of 2020. Nearly 1 in 3 young men in the United States report having no sex. None. Okay. Most women would not even think of that. They would be like, this is impossible. There's no way that's true. Because in their life, they are exposed to a lot of men trying to have sex with them. And then most of the time they succumb to these men if they fit a certain standards. So in their mind, they cannot rationalize that men are not having sex. The majority of men aren't even having sex. They aren't even getting at bats. And most of the time, if they get an at bat, it's a one-off. Now, we're backing it up here. The amount of men under 30 not having sex has tripled in the past decade. Tripled. The number of 18 to 29-year-old men reporting no sex in the past year more than doubled in the last decade. Now, what has happened in the last decade? We certainly have seen an increase in social media. We've seen an increase in dating apps. A lot more women are saying, hey, I got more access to top-tier men. I'll make it work. And they'll try to make it work with these guys, but they'll end up getting pumped and dumped, and it never works. Well, it's the men that she are letting easily pipe her down that gives her this opinion that men are trash. I mean, the data's backing up what we're talking about here. The data's backing up. The next thing that's happened, the more women that go get their back blown out by Chads and Tyrones or Pookies and Ray Rays, why do I give a damn? Why do I go out there and try? So now you get to a guy who's in his 30s, and 1 in 3 men age 18 to 24 say they haven't had any sex. Men and women age 25 to 34 also report an increase in sexual inactivity during this same time. Young men driving the decline in sex. Young men, it says shares of men and women between the ages of 18 and 30 report no sex in the past. But check this out. In 1989, the stats were relatively even. The amount of young women having sex and young men relatively even. As you went 10 years forward, it was almost relatively even with the decline from men. Of course, after the Boys to Men and Gangsta Rap era and 50 Cent era, the guys were, I guess the guys weren't getting any peace leave. All right, that's what this chart reflects. And then if you go all the way to 2018, okay, we don't have the current chart. You don't have the current data. Look at the separation now. Look at the separation now of the amount of men that are reporting no activity versus the amount of women. But there is definitely now a major gap in the amount of young men getting any versus any older one. Here's another study of men under the age of 30, and they call these men young men. These are men who are reporting 0 monkey double backflips, none, zip. 27% by the time we hit the 2018. That's a way increase, of course, tripled from 1989. But we're seeing this dynamic, more men struggling on the marketplace, women having more access to top tier men, women then increasing their standards based on what they can see they can have access to or what they have been giving themselves access to, right? Now, they can see it on Instagram, see it on a dating app, but then they can have it delivered straight to their door. Now this guy with the six-pack abs, now this rich guy will come to her house, pipe her down, and this woman will easily give herself to that guy. They're no longer waiting for sex, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, okay? But there's a major gulf in the sexual marketplace strategy, and this is why men are flocking to this space. They're looking for answers. They're like, man, what is going on? And when you live things in real time, you want a real-time explanation. More women are selecting top-tier men and getting their back blown out. Amazing, isn't it? So we're going to break that down. In the next one, we're going to talk about promiscuity and the idea of what promiscuity is and who's actually the promiscuous ones and who aren't. And then they come out, well, men are trash. Oh, you're talking about a small percentage of men. I mean, I can prove it. I can prove it based on the mate selection. You're talking about a very small percentage of men. However, when we say all women or many women do this, we're actually right. Many women are doing exactly what we're saying, and they fall more into that mold than not. I know it's hypocritical. I know it's biased, but it is what it is. Now, let's go into this particular chart and data right here. If you don't believe me, and these are the things that men are getting depressed about. Dang, coach, why are you telling me all this truth? I want to live in La La Land. I want to live in fantasy land. I don't need all this truth. Look at this. Look at this. Women have more sexual partners than men do. It is no longer a scandal if a woman is having more sex. Women have more sexual partners than men do. Okay? So my idea is this. Women are naturally promiscuous. they have been wanting to be more promiscuous, but society has held them back. They've been forced into monogamy. And there's some women that are still baby boomers and Generation Xers. They're like, nah, not me, man, not me, coach. Well, you've been trained and indoctrinated to believe. You've been shamed into not going out there being promiscuous. You had to creep around like a cat when you snuck around. I can tell you that most women don't give you their real sexual partners if you ask them, which I don't need to ask them because I know it's going to be more than most men. Especially if she's attractive, and especially if she's marginally attractive. If she's a 4 or 5, she has to have had a lot of sex partners because there's no way no one would talk to her. In this frame of now being able to be more promiscuous, women have not chosen to stay celibate. They haven't put the clamps on their own peace leave. They haven't become less married. They become less married in that time. So when given a choice, okay, have free sex, nobody's going to judge you, or be married. What did they choose? Oh, we can go out here for free. We can have as many sex partners as we want. We won't be judged. See, if they were naturally monogamous, they would have shut it down and said, nah, we still want to be married. And guess what? They've pushed out the marketplace. They pushed out their years to 25, 35, 45. And then they say,
what happened? Where did all the men go?
I want to be married now. Their attitudes are less marriageable. We've been forcing them to do that. And now when given the option, they've been chosen to be more promiscuous. Women more than men tend to be, I'll say, feel stifled by long-term exclusivity, despite having been taught that they were designed for it. There's an article. You guys can read all of these articles here. And yes, I'm just taking headings. And if you look at these articles about them being bored in marital long-term relationship sex, this actually lines up to some of the things that I talk about here. What do I say? It's been a lie the whole time. And I've been pointing that out a long time. And people come here, nah, that's not true. The whole pool boy, the whole milkman, the pizza delivery man, the vacuum cleaner salesman, the mailman, the personal trainer, they're getting sex on the side from their wives. As you break down the data on affairs, it's almost hand in hand, 50% of women are having affairs in their marriages. It's been right in front of our face the entire time. We've been seeing it, but some guys refuse to see it. And this is why you get your heart broken when you come to my channel. Well, I want to break your heart before a woman does. See, the issue is this. When women have more sex, the result of it is that men are going to get less of it. As women have more sex, the result is that men are going to get less of it. You're going to get less of it in your marriage. You're going to get less of it out here in the open marketplace. And you can't negotiate this thing. You can't negotiate attraction. It's going to be, it is what it is. And when we get to this part of why they're finding what? Men, they're saying that men, we're saying that 20% of men are sleeping with 80% of the women. Let's look at the articles here based on their crazy study. Women find 80% of men unattractive. Unattractive. You ain't talking about all men. You talking about a small percentage of men that you gave your body to and it ain't working out. Now, when it comes down to it, they say there's no good men out here. There's no economically attractive men. There's no men that are out here that are handsome. Too many men are short. When you start breaking it down, 80% of men are straight up, flat out invisible to women. Women think the top 10% of men are common. And they'll go, well, I want a guy that's 6'2". Well, he only reflects 7% of the population. We've been talking about that for a long time. Only 7% of men nationwide are over 6'2". And they go, really? That's a surprise. I would think it would be like more 30 or 40%. They will go out to restaurants, bars, clubs, and they'll say, damn, look at all these short guys. Where are all the tall guys at? Well, if you look at the representation of the room, it probably pans out that there aren't that many tall guys in there, and there never will be. But in their mind, they think, man, everywhere I go, I don't see that many tall guys. But every time I get on a dating app and swipe, a tall guy shows up at my house and blows my back out. There's got to be more taller guys in this. And there's not. There ain't ever going to be. Until this natural selection actually plays out. In 200 years, they'll be taller, but then there'll be taller guys. Now, women will get with the men who are below their standards. So listen, I want you guys to understand there's guys like me, 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", cleaning house, having no problems. But there's something else that is driving us to get all of that. It's driving us to get the peace leave. Like maybe you have more game, you have more charisma, you have your life in a better situation. So the argument then is, well, women don't necessarily choose the guy. They'll settle for guys that are shorter, but the guy has to have something else. He has to have money, he has to have status or charisma, or he has to be a rapper or something like that. Or he has to have game, he has to be a Mac. Yeah. Women will be with guys that fall under the standard. So, but these guys still fall into the 80% of men. I'm sorry, the 20% of men. And many women will not care about having most of these superficial standards. And some of these superficial standards will be from average women. Average women will have superficial standards for men.